I mean, Lou and I, you see it ourselves. We're repping the Rangers hard. Lou's got the Brooklyn Cyclones too. So, it's all New York themed show today, of course. But we're going to be joined by WFUV's very own beat reporter, Colin Loughran, to discuss the Rangers' run to the Cup.
Let's
Colin,
go.
How are you?
I'm doing great today, Tyler. Lou, I hope all's well with you guys. I'm doing even better considering last night's result for the Rangers. What a win. You're now 2 more wins away from reaching the Stanley Cup final. And considering how this team started their year by being obliterated by the Capitals on opening night, 5-1, then you go home and you lose to the Dallas Stars in OT, 3-2. I was there for that. This is even more amazing because I don't think anyone in media or even fans thought they'd make it quite this far.
I mean, as Ryan Mead of Blue Shirts Breakaway says, why not us? But this playoffs run has been so peculiar. I mean, 2 Game 7s, crazy comebacks, just wild games. Every single game feels like it just feels special. But what's been the biggest difference between the Carolina series to you and the first 2 games of this Tampa series?
Spacing. Spacing is so critical in today's game of hockey. It's the reason why a team like Edmonton looked so good early in the postseason and now seems to struggle against a unit like Colorado. Tampa has offered the Rangers a lot of free real estate on the ice, whereas Carolina was really solid on the forecheck. They were good at really clogging the neutral zone and making sure you're not getting easy pucks through into the O-zone. If you give the Rangers and Adam Fox space to operate, they're going to make you pay for it. I mean, Fox has been having an incredible postseason run. He's now 6 assists away from tying Brandon Leach for the most in a single Rangers postseason.
Colin, you come off that 7-game series against Carolina. You talked about it, the intense forecheck. It felt like every possession was a battle to get through the neutral zone. And now it's going to feel like the ice is wide open. Is that an adjustment Tampa is going to have to make when we get further on in this series? Because right now, the Rangers are dominating possessions. They're dominating the puck, and they're dominating the neutral zone.
I think Tampa's going to have to make quite a few adjustments. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get tougher on the forecheck the same way that Carolina could. I just don't look at that roster as the type of unit that can turn it on and off in a heartbeat. What they can do is get tougher defensively. I'm looking to guys like McDonough to really step up their game in front of the net, in front of Vasilevsky more specifically, because he struggled a little bit early. If they're going to make any sort of adjustment, it has to be on the defensive front, because I just don't see their forecheck applying the same pressure as a Carolina.
Absolutely. So, Colin, I mean, you've been covering the team for a while now, but what's been your favorite moment for the Rangers playoff run so far? What's been your singular favorite moment?
Oof, that's tough. There's been a lot of great moments. I'm torn between Game 7 against Pittsburgh, and I'm going to cop out here because I wasn't there for it, obviously, but Game 7 against Carolina might have been one of my favorite moments, too, because it was just so improbable. See, they were supposed to beat Pittsburgh the way the season was going.
Yes,
absolutely. That was becoming the narrative. Was, okay, they're better than what we all thought they were. Now they should win the playoff series, and you know what? If they lose against Carolina, it's still a successful season. When you go up to Raleigh in Game 7, the thought was, oh, well, it's kind of 50-50. The fact that they won that game really showed everybody what this team was made of, and it really showed what the young guys are made of. That kid line of Heedle, Lafreniere, Kako, they have been great. They were great in Game 7. They've been great against Tampa Bay so far. And to me, that win in Raleigh is the signature moment of the season.
Well, Colin, you mentioned him, so I'm going to ask you about him. To me, Filip Forsberg has been the surprise of the postseason. I've loved the kid line, but this is a guy that has really stood out to me in this postseason. He's had a crazy burst of late. Only scored 7 goals in the regular season, 8 goals in the postseason. Is this something you saw coming, and can this be a catalyst for him becoming the player he's kind of been expected to be? This is a top prospect that I think we've been waiting to develop for a couple of years now. It looks like he's finally coming into his own.
I think it's funny you bring up Filip Forsberg because there's been so many comparisons in the Rangers locker room to other past Rangers players. Like Adam Fox is always compared to Brian Leach, obviously. Filip Forsberg has been compared to someone like a Mika Zibanejad because they've told him they want him to play like Mika Zibanejad. That's the only reason he warranted those comparisons early in the year was Coach Gallant had said in some sort of press conference or told the reporter, oh, well, I told Phil I'd like him to play like Mika. Now, I don't think that Filip Forsberg is quite like Mika Zibanejad in the two-way sense, But in terms of scoring, he has a lot of the same characteristics. Does he have the one-timer like Nika? No. But as you're finding out on the break, he's filthy. So his development has been critical to the success of this Rangers team because amongst that kid line, yes, Lafreniere can score. Yes, Kakko's really good down low around the net. Heedle's the one guy that on the break, you want him to have the puck.
Absolutely. You see the development of Filda, that's his nickname. Filip Hedl has been an absolute revelation. And like, how much has that kid line impressed you? This is their first playoffs together. You never expect a kid line or like young kids to come into the playoffs and succeed in the way that they have so far. What's impressed you the most about the kid line? Was it the composure, the chemistry? What is it to you?
Initially, I think I was most impressed by the fact that they were able to be so productive together. People forget at the start of the year, Kaapo Kakko was with Kreider and Zibanejad. Towards the middle of the year, Lafreniere was on that top line. So I knew these were all great players. The question was, could they coexist together because of that age and be productive? And I've been floored by the amount of pressure they've been under and yet how they've still competed so well. I mean, look at who they're playing out there. It's not like they're playing Humpty Dumpty. You go up against Carolina or Tampa, you got to have your best hockey with you, and the kid line's done that. For me, the only surprise has been that they've been able to do it together.
Absolutely.
Colin, I want to ask you about these two games coming up. I think you can draw a similar parallel to the Rangers-Carolina series. Carolina wins 2 at home. Then the Rangers came and they got to their home ice. They won 2 and evened up the series. Do the Rangers need to steal one in Tampa here, or can Tampa even it up and the Rangers are still in a good spot?
That's tricky. If they had lost last night, then I'd say you have to win one in Tampa Bay. But just knowing the momentum that they have, I mean, this is Tampa Bay's first consecutive playoff loss since 2019. All of the momentum is on the Rangers' side right now. So in my mind, do you have to win in Tampa? Probably not, because you're going to come back to the Garden and you played like world beaters there. But the coach in me says you have to steal one for the sole purpose of Tampa Bay's champion. You still have to respect that. So if you can steal game 3 or 4, then you head back to the Garden with a chance to win it in game 5. So stealing one away on the road gives you a luxury that you wouldn't have if you dropped both.
Absolutely. I feel like the collective confidence level of Ranger fans right now is much higher than it was coming into the series. I mean, this series, the Rangers, even though they have home ice advantage, they're still considered by most underdogs, considering it's Tampa. I mean, back-to-back champions. You're always going to be the underdog going in. But I feel like they're playing so much more loose. Like, look back at that Carolina series. They played so restricted, so composed. Do you think that Game 7 in Carolina, where they absolutely obliterated the Hurricanes, freed up the Rangers a lot more? Obviously, you talked about spacing earlier, but do you think it's freed up the Rangers to play a lot more, just free-flowing?
I think it's a combination of things. I think when you're more confident, you're able to play that style of hockey. But I also think it's just a personnel mismatch right now. Tampa's got some tired legs out there to the extent that Carolina didn't have. They had, for the most part, guys that were young, hungry, and ready to go. So I think when you combine that with the Rangers being so young and so good in open ice, it allows you to play a different style of hockey than maybe they had been allowed to do previously. I'm looking at the latter half of this series, and really the kid line could be key. That top line for the Rangers is accruing a whole lot of lost energy, if you catch my drift there. I mean, Kreider, Zibanejad, Vetrano, those guys have really been relied on a lot to chew up ice time. Same thing with Adam Fox. I know he's been amazing this postseason, but that wears and tears. So if I'm looking at the latter half, you might be onto something in that it will slow up a little bit as we shift to Tampa. But for the most part, I don't see the open ice situation changing that dramatically or reverting back to where it was against the Hurricanes.
This series was kind of marketed as a battle of two of the best goalies in the NHL, possibly the two best goalies in the world. You have Vasilevsky, who's been really the guy for the past couple of years, and Igor, who was the best goalie in the league this year. Igor's lived up to the hype. Vasilevsky, not so much through the first 2 games. And you look at his record against the Rangers going back to the regular season this year, 0-5, allowing 4 goals a game. Is this a case of just a bad stretch for Vasilevsky, or do the Rangers have his number?
I think for the most part, the Rangers are beating Vasilevsky the way you're supposed to beat him. Like, he's the type of goalie where you're not going to jam a lot of pucks through the net up close. You're going to have to try and beat him in space. Igor is a bit of the same way. I think he's better with the puck, which means that if you're close up to Igor, he's going to shut that down and not get too clumsy there. Vasilevsky's just been struggling with the Rangers' speed from what I've seen. There's been times where the puck has shifted from east to west, and he just can't get to it to save his life. That could be sore legs. That could be lack of energy, fatigue. Whereas on the Rangers' end, they have good defensemen right now in front of Igor, which is making his life a little bit easier. And even when the Lightning get a break or get a big opportunity, I mean, that shot by Stamkos late in the game last night that could have tied it up was a great save by Igor made there. And partially, I think that's because of the type of goalie he is, where he's very comfortable in those close quarter situations. Like, even if you get the puck in the slot, it's not guaranteed that you're getting it by Igor. And moreover, if you get it on the break, you best believe that you're going to have to shift it over quickly from east to west because Igor's got this flexibility to get over there pretty quick. So I think in conclusion there, the Rangers have Vasilevsky's number, but I think their offensive push goes against the very thing that Vasilevsky's a tad weaker at later in his career.
One last question for you, Colin, before we let you go. If the season ends today, who is your personal Rangers playoff MVP, like the Conn Smythe? Who do you think it is?
Adam Fox. It has to be Adam Fox. You are 6 assists away from tying Brian Leetch for the most in a single Rangers postseason. Rangers fans know that name is legendary here in New York. For me, you need a solid defenseman if you're going to make a Stanley Cup push like the one that they have. And I would not want anyone else on my team personally than Adam Fox. I know there's a lot of people that would take Mark Carr over Fox. I know Charlie McAvoy up in Beantown has also gotten some respect as of late. But to me, the two-way ability says it all. Adam Fox has been his MVP because he's done the small things. On defense, he fights hard. On offense, he's not scoring all the time, but he's the one that can kind of set the table for everyone else to do their thing, especially that power play unit.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Colin, for coming on and joining the show with us today. Have a good one. Hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.
Dude, Colin Loughran, legitimately one of the best beat reporters we have on the station, especially when it comes to hockey. I don't want to insult any other hockey reporters, but I don't know if there's anyone more knowledgeable than him. Like, he interprets the game in a way that the average fan just doesn't. So you ever need any hockey reports, you go to Colin Loughran, although Quiggs does a fantastic job.
Quiggs, great job.
They're both. That's a powerhouse beat reporting crew, and you have Quiggs and Loughran in the same sense. That's amazing. But Colin brought up a lot of really impressive things, and I liked what he talked about, especially with Vasilevsky, because that was something. I don't think it's a fluke that the Rangers are scoring on Vasilevsky like this. One of the weaknesses that Steve Valiquette on the MSG postgame, he mentioned it as soon as the Rangers beat Carolina in Game 7. They started looking ahead to Tampa, started looking ahead to Vasilevsky, because that's the big story. This is one of the greatest goalies of our generation.
Absolutely.
And they said his weakness, it's a little bit above the block side. And in this postseason, he's allowed 34 goals. 21 have been on the blocker. And if you look at the Rangers' goals, in Game 1, Kreider beats him above the blocker. Vetrano nails one above the blocker.
Absolutely.
Panarin sinks the final goal of that game above the blocker. And then the final nail in the coffin of Game 2, Mika Zibanejad above the blocker. So they're hitting that spot. The Rangers did their research.
Absolutely.
And really, they're making one of the best goalies. And don't get it twisted. Vasilevsky is an incredible goalie.
Stud.
The fact that the Rangers put 3 goals on him after a loss, I think there's some crazy stat that Vasilevsky has a .995 save percentage after a loss. Like, he's ridiculous.
No, absolutely. He is. Well, before the series, there was debate about like Shesty or.
And listen,
Vasilevsky.
the Rangers fans are chanting Igor's better, and Igor has been better.
I do not like that. By the way, I think it's stupid. Do not
listen. You don't want to rile
Vasilevsky
Vasilevsky up.
Do not give Vasilevsky the fodder, please.
Igor's been better in this
Absolutely.
series, but Vasilevsky has the resume. He's been that guy for a few years. This is really Igor's first year as an elite goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be thrilled with the Rangers on home ice take 2 against the Lightning, and all this talk about hey, maybe they can only score against backup goalies. I think that goes out the window when you score 6 and then 3 against the best goalie in the league.
Absolutely.
Like that's I think all that talk about only scoring on backups. They struggled more against the backups than they did against Vasilevsky, and that's funny.
It's absolutely hilarious. Like Louis Domingue and Antti Raanta gave the Rangers more trouble than
Dude,
Vasilevsky has.
Louis Domingue gave the Rangers a world of trouble. Because DeSmith got hurt in the first game. Domingue came in, I think, in overtime or in the third period.
Third period, I believe.
Came in the third period. Rangers couldn't get anything against him for 3 periods.
Fresh legs.
Struggled against him really through the first 4 games.
Fresh legs of Louis, and
It's
then
ridiculous.
they really picked it up, obviously, and then they started just getting comfortable. It's Vasilevsky. He's tired. He's got tired legs. He's played 3 deep postseason runs in a row.
Does he have tired legs? He got 9 days of rest, man. That's one of the things I wanted to talk.
Yeah.
I wanted
Let's
to talk
talk
about
the 9 days of rest
with
actually.
Tampa because there was all this talk about 9 days of rest. The Rangers only coming off of 1 day of rest.
Yep.
I went into this series thinking Rangers are going to take the first 2 games
Right,
because
they have the momentum.
they're riding high off of a 7-game series against Carolina. You come back to Madison Square Garden. They've only lost 1 game in Madison Square Garden. There was the first game.
Overtime.
It was a triple overtime game
overtime,
against
yep.
Pittsburgh. They played really well, and they get beat in an overtime goal. Right, every other game they've won in MSG. So to come off that tough series against Carolina, again, Carolina, a nightmare opponent for the Rangers with that forecheck. To win that Game 7, I think you want to just dive into the next series, especially you have the first 2 games at home. I'm looking at 9 days for Tampa. I don't care that they're experienced as a playoff team. 9 days is just too much.
It's too
and
much,
I think
yeah.
you saw a little about that. I know people talked about the rust. I think they were a little rusty. I think it took them. It's so hard to get back up to playoff intensity. People talk about how fun the Stanley Cup playoffs are to watch. One of the reasons for that is because the players, they play with a different level of intensity. It's just different. And no matter what you do in practice, you can't replicate that. So the Rangers they're on their normal schedule. They take a day, they play another game. They just played a Game 7 against Carolina, fighting for their lives. It's super easy to dial back up the intensity. You're going up against Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay swept Florida and then had 9 days off. They really hadn't had to play that many high-leverage games in the past 2
Right.
weeks. You have to all of a sudden get back up to that playoff intensity in a really tough arena to play in. I expected Tampa to struggle. Now, the one thing, and I'm interested to hear your take on this, I think maybe the fatigue sets in a little bit here. Tampa gets to come home. They've got 2 games to kind of get the rust off. I think they're going to be sharp. They looked better in Game 2 than they did in Game 1.
Absolutely.
I don't know if fatigue sets in for the Rangers necessarily, but I think the tables start to turn. You have to play in an away rink. It's not Carolina, but Tampa, it's really nothing to shoo away either. And so Tampa gets home advantage. I think Tampa, the favors in Tampa for these next 2 games.
Oh, absolutely. The favors in Tampa. They get home ice advantage. They get to go back to a familiar crowd. That being said, I just think the Rangers, like right now, they're playing so much more loose. Colin mentioned it. First thing, spacing. Carolina plays such a boxed-in system where they clamp down on everything. They're faster to the puck. They're so intense. They're so well coached by Rob Brindamore. He did such a great job limiting the goals and making it a low-scoring series for the first 4 or 5 games of it. John Cooper's a phenomenal coach, first of all.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a reason why he's back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. John
one of the
Cooper's
greatest coaches in the sport. You can legitimately have that conversation.
Absolutely. And he's able to adjust on the fly. That's why he's so good at what he does. That being said, I think that Tampa is a much, much, much better matchup for the Rangers than Carolina.
I think Carolina was the worst matchup in the entire league
and
for the Rangers.
And the Rangers got past that. They got past the hump, and doing it on the road in Game 7 in an not unfamiliar environment, but a tough environment.
Yeah,
it's not easy to play there, not at all. Especially the way Carolina plays. Tampa's able to do that, and I mean Tampa plays a lot more loose, a lot more star power, but a lot more like open ice. Let the players play.
Listen, they're trading the heavy forecheck. They're not going to do that. They don't have the players to do that, but
nope.
they have the offensive talent that Carolina simply doesn't, and that's when it helps to have Igor Shesterkin.
I mean,
to have him just stand on his head at times. I mean,
dude,
you talk about the end of Game 2. He had to face a flurry of shots.
I almost had a heart attack watching
and
that.
really just stood in his head. And the one gets in, but you're not going to blame Igor when he's had just a couple of fantastic games. I'm so curious to see how these 2 games in Tampa go, because I think if the Rangers can win Game 3, I think it's a 4-game sweep. I think if Tampa wins Game 3, you're probably talking about coming back to MSG with an even 2-2 series.
I could agree
I'm
with
not
that.
ruling out that the Rangers could then come back and win Game 4. I think that the home ice advantage for Tampa, it's simply not a conversation the way it was with Carolina. The home ice advantage for the Rangers is absolutely a conversation. There's something about MSG. They play up for that. So I'm not too worried about. I think the Rangers could absolutely steal one. I wouldn't even be surprised the way you would have been surprised if they stole one in Carolina when they did.
Right.
But I'm so curious to see how they play on the road, because the one thing I say is I know Rangers fans are happy right now. You can't rule out Tampa.
Not at all.
And listen, Rangers fans, you've been in this situation before. You were down 2-0 to Carolina, and you saw what winning 2 home games did for you. It boosted you back into that series.
Right.
I think it launched you to that Game 7 win. The way they dominated Carolina at home was a huge boost for the morale of the Rangers and for that series. So if Tampa comes in and they sweep at home, it's a brand new series. So Rangers fans, you have every right to be happy. I'm happy. I'm a Rangers fan.
Absolutely.
I'm thrilled. I'm over the roof right now.
Right.
But I'm still very cautious. I'm not going to say that this series is over until the Rangers win that 4th game. Obviously, that's an obvious statement, but I think that's just the way you have to treat Tampa.
Absolutely. And the biggest revelation for this playoffs, I feel, has been the kids. The kid line.
You have to talk. You have to talk about the kids. The kids line, but
yeah,
there's one other guy we got to talk about. Deandre Miller. He's the guy that scores the first goal in that game to even it up. Right? Tampa scores within like the first 2 minutes, and you're going, oh boy, Tampa showed up to play. And Deandre Miller gets his first shot block, takes it back, and beats Vasilevsky glove side. And I mean, it's just huge, and he's been playing. He's such a fantastic defender. His ability as a forward, he's fantastic. You'll love to see that from Deandre.
The development of Deandre Miller has been absolutely phenomenal to see. But like just a quick note, we have a quick piece of audio from our beat reporter, Thomas Quigley, who interviewed Gerard Gallant regarding Deandre Miller. Here you go.
Yeah, no, he's been good all year. I mean, he's getting better. Every month he got better and better, more confidence. And, he plays 24, 25 minutes a night for us. And playing with Jacob Trouba's really helped his game. And, he's a reliable player. And he's a young kid, but he's still playing great hockey for us. So we love him. Love the way he plays.
And I think he's really become maybe not an elite defenseman, but he's done so much for this team.
And
you look at those 2 defensive pairings, the top 2 defensive pairings for the Rangers.
So confident.
First off, Fox and Lindgren, who I think complement each other perfectly. They both do different things well. They're a great pairing. Trouba, a hard hitter, and he's paired with the very athletic Deandre Miller. It's a guy that used to be a forward, I think, in his youth high school days, and that's why you see he's got that speed. He's got great hands. He's going to be a star in this league. And listen, not to put shame on the third defensive line, it's kind of just average. Listen, Braun and Schneider, they're good.
It's a good compliment because you got age, experience, and you got young.
Miller and Trouba and Fox and Lindgren are just at a different level. To have those 2 defensive pairings with the way that your top 3 lines are playing, it's really the Rangers are in a good spot right now.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that they're so young, I mean, obviously Braun and Trouba are a little bit older, but they got 4 really young, under 24 defensemen. You got Braun, not Braun, excuse me, Schneider, Fox, Miller, and Lindgren. They're all young. They're all getting their first taste of playoff experience, really, and they're all stepping up to the task. It's really great to see. Lindy, first of all, shout out to Lindgren, the guy, the warrior. First of all, playoff beard is immaculate, very messy but immaculate. The guy is just, as you said, perfect compliment to Fox, because Lindy, more of a defensive guy, sets the tone, and then Foxy can just free roam and do whatever he wants, and it works perfectly. It's so fun to see Fox set up the power play, but set up the offense. It's really nice to see and be confident in the defense. After the first Pittsburgh series was a little scary. Obviously, Lindy being out.
No, the defense really struggled in the Pittsburgh series.
Patrick
and
Nemeth.
It stepped up in the Carolina series, but you're still seeing great defense from them.
Exactly.
And another good thing, it's fun to talk about, like the kids and the kind of surprises, but the stars are stepping up, and that's not something you could have said about the Rangers. I mean, there was a point in that Carolina series, especially through the first 2 games, where you were asking, hey, Mika, time to show up. Kreider, time to show up. Panarin, time to show up. And you feel like, especially Mika and Panarin gets that goal in Game 1, and Mika's just been fantastic, really, ever since
Savannah June, baby.
Ever since Game 3. Mika's been my favorite part. I'm gonna buy a Mika Zibanejad jersey at some point. When they get a medium back on the team store, I'm getting a Mika jersey, because that's just how awesome he's been. But you need the stars to show up, and that's what they've done. And to go up against the Tampa Bay defense, that, again, you're not scared of this defense. They give you the space. It's going to be a big series. I think Panarin's not done scoring. I think you're going to see Kreider score before the series is over. And if I had to bet on it, Mika's not done scoring either.
Oh, Mika's not done scoring at all. Mika's Zibanejad is going to be here for a long while. That being said, the first guy you mentioned, Panarin, repping the jersey right now.
And I have his hair, so it's
exactly,
all good.
Exactly. We got it all for the studio. And then next thing you know, you're going to have a Mika jersey, hopefully. Hey, NHL store, MSG shops, please restock for Lou's sake.
Quick shout out to the Rangers fan zone. I went yesterday, and they got like hockey foosball. They got like a little shooting game.
Yeah.
And they got like former Rangers players. It's free to go in, and you get autographs from Rangers players. It's not even crowded, I guess, because it's like Friday in the afternoon. But Rangers fans, check it out. I got a cool little Rangers tattoo.
Oh yeah,
dope.
Absolutely. Rangers fans,
A little glitter.
they're first of all, they're diehard. They're loud. You hear the from the goals.
I was just talking about this with my friend. It's so
Best
simple,
goal
but
song.
such a good goal song.
Best goal song. Every time
really
I see,
gets you riled
listen.
up.
Every time I see it on Twitter when the Rangers score a goal and you click on the video, you hear that's just goosebumps. It gets you so excited and so hyped. And why I'm confident going into the road games at Tampa. Why? Because I think that Ranger fans travel well. I think you're going to see a lot of blue and white in the Tampa stands. We're going to see a good Rangers crowd.